Good morning all.
Good morning, sir.
That sounds good. I'm standing here just to introduce the dignitaries on the dais, and starting with a very warm welcome to Dr. Daniel Taylor and Mr. Apan. When my colleague Dr. Amit, he asked me to introduce the dignitaries, I thought it was going to be a very easy task. But when I started reading about the speakers, sir, I must confess one thing. If only I could ever compile all your works in life, I stand a good chance for my own PhD. It's a tremendous amount of work Dr. Taylor has done, friends, and I don't think I'll be doing enough justice to his background, but I'll try my best, and with the request to Dr. Taylor to kindly excuse me if I miss on many things. Okay. Well, friends, we have here the great personality, Dr. Daniel Taylor. It's done his PhD from the Harvard University on development planning, and before that his master's also from Harvard University in educational planning. And right before that he has been to the Yale University for his grad and undergrad, before that Johns Hopkins University for the college. He is presently the founder president of University of the World. Right from 2011 till date continues. Also associated with Future Generations Graduate School of Applied Social Change and Conservation, the endowed professor, Equity and Empowerment, from 2009 till date. He also was with the Johns Hopkins University School of Public Health, Senior Associate Department of Population and Family Health, with the United States State Department Agency for International Development as an advisor to Nepal, Harvard University Teaching Fellow on Population Education, and many other assignments. He has to his credit a series of awards and honors. The list is too long, but just to name a very few of them. He was honored with the Order of the Golden Ark, presented by His Royal Highness Prince Bernhard of the Netherlands for work in international conservation. That was in 2004. Honorary Professor, Institute of Botany, Laboratory of Quantitative Ecology by the Chinese Academy of Sciences, Beijing, way back in 1993. He was knighted with Gorkha Dakshin Bhav III by His Majesty King Virendra Veer Vikram Shah of Nepal for work in Nepalese conservation, and was also honored as the commencement speaker, the US President's Scholars, Washington DC. Come to some of his very important achievements in community development are: he was the co-planner of Pendeva program for community-based services in Tibet, project selected by the United Nations in 1998. As one of the 50 leading development projects worldwide. Also in the Pendleton County, West Virginia, USA, the Planning Commission member, and subsequently also Pendleton County, West Virginia, the Economic Development Authority, he was a member of the board. He has lot many things to his credit as well as the achievements in the conservation and sustainable development are concerned. He was the co-designer of the Lalu Wetland National Nature Preserve, covering about 1,500 acres urban park in Tibet and China joint border, way back in the 1990s, 99 to 2002. He was co-designer of the Divan Biosphere Reserve, Arunachal Pradesh, India. He was also with the Chinese and Tibetan government designed for Great Rivers Ecosystem Management Plan, covering 40 million acres, joining Yangtze, Mekong, Salween and Brahmaputra rivers. He was design leader of the Koormu-Langma Mount Everest National Nature Preserve, covering 6 million acres of land. Too many things to his credit and doing a great job to the community. From all that I was reading, it seems that Dr. Taylor has spent more than half of his life in Indo-Chinese area as compared to his own country, perhaps. That was. And as far as his family background goes, it has more than 100 years of history association with India. But friends, as I said, I fail on many things. Too many things, only when we start hearing him, we come to know about it. He has about listed with me about 48 great publications to his credit on various subjects, but most of them related with ecology, environment, sociology. That's how I could understand. And I think I'm right, Dr. Taylor. Also, friends, we have Sri Umak Apang with us. Sri Umak Apang is a BA in sociology from the Hindu College, Delhi, and he did his MBA from Europe. He was elected to the 12th Lok Sabha as Member of Parliament in 1998 and was appointed Union Minister of State, Tourism under Sri Atal Bihari Vajpayee. In 2004, he was elected to the Legislative Assembly as MLA and was advisor to the Chief Minister of Arunachal Pradesh. He was also the Vice President of Future Generations, which is an international non-profit organization, and currently is a member of the Board of Future Generations India. His special hobbies are the adventure sports, reading, music, bird watching, gardening, and outdoor activities. That's what perhaps brought both of them together up with a common interest. His special interests are on the community-based social work on environment associated with grassroots level healthcare programs in Arunachal Pradesh. And many more, but the list is long. I'm not going to go there. We have two great personalities with us. Sir, I once again, on behalf of Birla Institute of Management Technology and my own behalf, welcome you to this gathering, and we'll be leaving the hall open after the event. Now, just a little floral welcome to Dr. Taylor and Chief Abba.
धन्यवाद इसके लिए बहुत खुश हूँ यहाँ
And this one for Dr. Abba. So with these two words, without coming into the audience, I would request you to please.
Thank you very much. I want to share with you some thoughts and some perspective from India to the whole world, which is the lessons of Gandhi. Now, it is extraordinarily arrogant for somebody from the United States to be giving a lecture in India on Gandhiji. So let me first apologize for the arrogance. But I think there is a slight problem in India. And the problem can be easily summarized if you all open your wallets and you pull out a rupee. I think Bapu would be horrified to see his picture on money. That India is now commemorating the man with the great message of Satyagraha by putting his picture on money is why I am here. because I think there is another message about Gandhi that I would like to share with you today. Most of us think of Gandhiji as a man who fought against empire, the British Empire, and separated India in a peaceful way from empire, where until that time, all freedom movements had been violent. France, Haiti even before that, the United States, the Soviet Revolution, these were all violent freedom movements. But Gandhiji brought a different type of freedom movement, and that's what I want to talk to you about. Because what was important was not the political freedom, I argue, but for Gandhiji it was about other freedoms. What Amartya Sen has now discussed in his book, of course, as development as freedom. But this is not a historical lesson, because it is a very current lesson, because we have a new empire now. It's the empire of money. It's the empire of business and commercial interests that are taking away people's freedoms. And there is a message, I think, in the Gandhian ideas that I now want to share with you, that speaks about these new freedoms that we can have, that other scholars have talked about. And this is a global empire that we're talking about. Development agencies and social change agencies that are also trying to address issues of poverty and gender and caste and health are all administering their services through money, through budgets. And the Gandhian message is a different one, because Gandhi used something that is available to everybody. Everybody in this room, whether you're Buddha like myself, or whether you're Joan like yourself, we share an equal commodity of our human energy. Nobody in this room has the financial balance of Bill Gates. You are different. Or even with the Birla family, wonderful family and charitable as it is. There is a difference and separation in the world when you use the currency of money. But when you use the currency of our human energy, what Gandhiji called Swaraj, Satyagraha, these manifestations of the force of truth, the force of life control that are inside ourselves, we all have the potential to reach development when we use that resource. Because the monetary resources is scarce. That is precisely what makes it valuable. It's a competition for scarce resources. But the resource that is universally available in roughly equal proportions among all people, when that resource is used, you have the largest freedom movement that humanity has ever seen. 1/5 of humanity moved with using this resource of Satyagraha by learning to control the human energies in community. So that while we were trying to achieve the self-rule, the Swaraj, the political Swaraj, there was the other dimension of Gram Swaraj that came into our collective being. Now, I am not trying to romanticize Gandhi. I will make this point several times. But the lessons from Gandhi can be modernized. it's a holy feature, but I think it's also misguided in the modern age, is to try to recover this romantic Khadi village life that is, people think is the authentic Gandhi. In my judgment, what I want to share with you today is that the more authentic Gandhi, while I put on Khadi pajamas truly every night when I go to bed. For 69 years I have done that. Since I came in 1946, I began wearing Khadi. Okay? But that is not where the real Swaraj comes from. Okay? The spinning wheel that is behind the Khadi is a symbol. It is not the means itself. And what was so beautiful about the spinning wheel of Gandhi was that it was something that could be in everyone's hands. Okay? It was a technology that you could make in your village. And with that technology, you could get this control over your life, the Swaraj. Okay? Now, from an engineering standpoint, we've got engineers in the room here today. It's horrible engineering. At the very basics, there's no ball bearings in the spinning wheel. So there's a great waste of human energy. At the same time, you're trying to use human energy. It's the symbol that's important of the spinning wheel. And when that wheel goes around and around, the interesting thing, as Gandhi said, was it's not doing the same circle. It might look to you as though it's the same circle, but into one end of that wheel is coming a confused mess of cotton. And out of the other end is coming in organized thread. That is the symbol. It's the symbol of the transformation that's happening in the cotton. It isn't the symbol of the wheel. I think the attention has been in the wrong place. The question is, how can we take the commodity of our energy that is confused in the beginning and put it into this wheel and have an organized, systematic thread that comes out with which we can grow our Swadeshi. Okay, our locally grown quality of life. And that is the real Khadi. It is not my pajama. The real Khadi is this Swadeshi that we grow in the holism of life. Now, one of Gandhi's great regrets was that the Congress Party moved into politics. He spoke repeatedly through the 1930s about the fact that Congress should stay above the political process and let new parties form to deal with the politics. Because the real Swadeshi, the real life change, the real freedom were these ideas that Professor Amartya Sen later picks up, and many others. I just mentioned Sen because he's the most current evangelist on this topic. So freedom is not given, as Gandhi told us. Freedom is made by the actions that we do. And this is why the beauty of this Satyagraha concept is really in self-control. It's this idea that the truth force of truth and human energy that we get control over. And there's a special symbol here in the idea of fasting. Now, many people think fasting is simply a process of not eating. But once again, I think the focus is on the wrong place. Okay? in not eating, you're getting control over your body. Okay? And in getting your control over your body, you're also able to get community control. Of course, Gandhi did in a special way, because through his fasts, he got control of the Indian people in a truly amazing way. I'll just share one personal story about this. 1947, soon after partition, in the month of November, there were riots all over the subcontinent. You know this history very well. My grandparents and my father, my uncles, were leading a special convoy that was set up by Viceroy Mountbatten during that time, going back and forth across the Pakistan-Indian border in the Punjab, providing relief for the refugees. And they would come across these fields with tens of thousands of people who were injured in cholera epidemics. And at one point they went to Panipat, where there had been a terrible massacre, where the Muslims had been locked into some godowns there and surrounded and held in imprisonment, essentially, while they were in the godowns. And Gandhi came there, and he thought that rather than immediately engaging in this process of trying to free them, he would stay outside and fast here in Panipat, which is just a few minutes from here now. And he had been so successful in his fasts in Calcutta, kept the Bengal area from exploding in violence and bloodshed. And my grandparents were there, and he went and they talked, because they knew each other. They'd been working together for some years. He says, I think I should go fast. And my grandfather said to him, to Gandhiji, no, don't go fast. Just let the Muslims go to Pakistan. And Gandhi said to my grandfather, he said, there is something larger here than the Muslims going to Pakistan, letting them go. The larger thing here is, can we in the north achieve what we achieved in the east of forgiving each other for the violence we've done? The message is bigger than politics. That's my point here. Okay? It's bigger than politics. And the question that I want to be focusing on today with this starting point of Gandhi is, how can we take this larger than politics message and bring it into the wholeness of life? What Gandhiji called sarvodaya. Okay, this wholeness of life for the individual and for the community. And I believe that there is a way to do that, and I'm going to be sharing it with you, and we call that system the seed scale. And I will start to give you a quick introduction to this process. And in this seed scale method, I will be saying over and over again that what is important is the principles for which you work. And this is a pure Gandhian idea, that it is from the principles that we lead our lives that change comes. It's not from our budgets. It's not from our political motivations and organizations. It's not from military control and conquest. It's from the values and principles that we lead. And the ones that I will be focusing on are 4 principles. And I just want to summarize these in a Gandhian context before I turn to the seed scale. And if you can remember anything from what I'm sharing with you today, try to remember these 4 principles. I will say them several times. But the first one is, build on your successes. You do not focus on your failures. Nobody is garibi. Everybody is alive. The fact that you're alive, even if you're poor, even if you're sick, the fact that you're alive is your success. Okay, you're building from your successes. Gandhi never had a political failure in a measurable way. When he planned his marches, he was always very careful to have every fast, every protest successful. And if he thought it was failing, he canceled it. Okay, there are a number of examples of Gandhiji breaking and fasting, and he would, because he couldn't be getting the community coming together. That's what he was trying to do, bringing it together. So the point that I want to make here, without getting too far off into Gandhi, is that he was always trying to build from success. He started this in South Africa when he was just a single lawyer who was trying to build community capacity in an apartheid system, which was worse than the system in India. Okay. The second principle that we want to emphasize is the idea of three-way partnerships. Okay? Gandhi, of course, had a partnership with the Indian people. This was the bottom up. But he was trying to get a partnership also with the British. Now, he couldn't do it with the Viceroy. He couldn't do it with the military forces here in India. But he did it in England with the liberal elements of the religious groups, with the vegetarian societies in England that were constantly putting moral pressure inside of England to this, so that it became impossible or very difficult for them to do the bloodshed that they did, for instance, in Amritsar and other places like that. Okay, so he used the moral force of the top down with his bottom up. And then one of the aspects of Gandhiism that's seldom talked about is his use of the outside in. The three-way partnership is bottom up, top down, and outside in. Gandhi was one of the first great international manipulators of the media. Okay? Before Gandhi, the political movement in India did not wear white. Gandhi's innovation was to have everybody wearing white khadi. Because when you get beaten up by the British and the soldiers, the white shows the blood in the dirt on a black and white photograph. Okay? He mandated you must wear white because it looks good in the pictures. Okay? This was before television. This is when it was newsprint, black and white photographs. He was using the outside in, the influence of the media, to extend his message worldwide. So he was not just getting the top down from back in Britain, which he certainly was. He was getting pressure from the United States, from Europe, from all over the world, from Africa, because he used this three-way partnership. Now, the third principle that I will be talking about time and again is evidence. Okay? Evidence as opposed to opinions. India is filled with opinions. I travel, as was mentioned, in many countries. I don't think I know any culture in the world that is as opinionated as India, where people are very comfortable having these wonderful arguments with zero facts, where you're shouting at each other opinions and opinions. But Gandhi was evidence-based. And that's where we come back to the idea of Gram Swaraj and Swaraj. He said, look at the evidence of what you can do in your life. You can make your own clothes. You can improve your health by changing your diet. You don't need to go to the doctor. With all his emphasis on diet. Now, in fact, what we now know is Gandhi's ideas about health were absolutely, almost always wrong. But the bigger, deeper idea was he was trying to tell people to take control of their health. Okay? He was saying, look at that evidence that you can do. Look at the evidence that you can make your own income with your own hands. Okay? With the spinning wheel. And the fourth principle that I will mention time and again, but I'm starting to, a good teacher, right? You go and say the same thing many, many times, is behavior change. Okay? Gandhiji was asking us to change our behaviors towards self-reliance, away from victimization. Okay? Become the change that you can see. That backwards. Okay? He's asking you to become your own change. Okay? Now, with that, I want to say, before I turn to my slides, I want to focus on what an unusual contrast Gandhiji was. If you look at the other great leaders of that time, when he was working in the early 20th century, the 1900s, Tsar Nicholas II, Franklin Roosevelt, Joseph Stalin, Woodrow Wilson, Queen Victoria, Mao Zedong, Adolf Hitler, Winston Churchill, these were all people who loved to control things. Okay? All the other people that we consider great leaders from the 20th century are control freaks with armies and empires and businesses. And one of these wonderful mottos of Gandhi, which Amit Bhai remembers my father telling him, and my father heard it from Gandhiji himself, was, "There go my followers, I better hurry and catch up." Gandhi said it many times, but my father, when he heard it from Gandhiji, he never forgot it. And you heard my father tell it, didn't you, Amit? Okay, what a difference. There go my followers, I better hurry and catch up. That's so different from Winston Churchill. That's so different from Mao Zedong, Adolf Hitler, the other great leaders of the time. There's a message of our learning there. As professors, we have to hurry and catch up with you, the bright students. Okay, now, let me turn here to the PowerPoint. I think we need to probably lower the lights. Can we do that? Or should we just do it with that screen? Let's practice here. The seed scale method that I will be sharing with you can be summarized as a universal process. So people can create localized solutions. Okay? It's a process that anybody in any community in the world can do. This process began, the scholarship on this process, in 1993, when the head of UNICEF worldwide came to my father and me and said he wanted my father and me to lead an international task force because there was no relationship in the UNICEF between the money they put into a project and what they got. They put $100 million in, they put $1 million. There was no relationship. There was no relationship between the people they put into a project and what came out in an immunization program, in a women's education program. His question was, what is causing social change? It's not money, because if there was money, there should be a direct relationship between budget and output. And it's not staffing. Put in a lot of people does not necessarily mean that it's going to be successful. Putting in few people maybe more successful. So we began an international task force that has been going on and is still going on, for which there are a series of scholarly publications that have come out. And I'm leaving here as a contribution to your library here 2 copies of the most recent book, okay, which I assume you can put in your library. It's the last book on the list. So that if you want to go and read more, you can check these books out of the library. If you all go check 2 copies of the books, they'll disappear. But they're also for sale in Delhi, because it's an Oxford University Press book. You can go to the Oxford University store. They're on Kindle. And there's also a website. So you can go get it off the website, www.seedscale.org. There's even a tutorial you can get if you want to take a Moodle class, Seed Scale. So this is the history of the scholarship behind it. Now, how does it work? Seed Scale is an acronym. Here in India, you love acronyms. I'm not going to tell you at this point what seed means and what scale means, because there's a special meaning in the word seed and then scale. Seed is the idea of a human energy. There is an event. There is something in every community that is a beginning point. If it wasn't there, the community would be dead. The community would not exist. So if you exist as a person, if your family exists, if your community exists, or if your nation exists, there is a success, because otherwise you'd be dead. So define that. The challenge is definition at that point. How do you define that? And specifically, what is in a seed is DNA. Okay, what's in a biological seed is DNA. The question that we're going to be talking about is, what is the social DNA? What is the economic DNA? What is the values DNA that is in yourself as an individual, that's in your family, that's in your community, that we can use that DNA to grow? Then we harvest, in the Gandhian terms, satyagraha, the force of truth. Let's be true to that DNA to grow this. And as we grow this seed, we're going to take it to scale. Now, one of the important ideas that's in seed scale theory, because this is a theory of change, just like capitalism is a theory of change. Okay? Capitalism is based on the competition for scarce resources. That's the basic premise underlying capitalism. Seed scale is based on the cooperation, where we share resources. Okay? It's a whole theory of change. And the core point here is that 2 things to go to scale is qualitative growth and quantitative growth. In other words, more people will participate in something if it's improving the quality of life. If it's improving the quality of life, more people join. Once more people join, we have a larger experimental pool, so we create more qualitative growth. Okay? It's a dual feedback loop, where quality reinforces quantity, quantity reinforces quality. We'll be talking about it more. There are a number of feedback loops that drive this process. The important idea here, though, is the idea of feedback loop, because you're growing by internal resources at that point. You're not growing because you've gotten a subsidy from the government. External resources. That's the core concept. Okay, when you're growing through cooperation, it is the opportunity for all. When you're going through a competition, it is you're denying opportunity for some other part of the process. This is pure Gandhian. He wants the whole of India to move forward together, the Dalits as well as the Brahmins, as well as the Muslims, as well as the Buddhists. Okay? Cooperation creates a collective, combined forward energy. The word he was using there was Vokniti, right? And what is driving action now is the energies of people as we're moving forward together. We're seeing collective opportunity. And what is growing is partnerships. Each of those partnerships is getting stronger as we're moving forward together. Thank you, sir. Now, one of the most important things is to recognize that everybody is different. No two people in this class are the same, right? No two villages in India are the same. But there's the same government policy for all villages. Behuku. We have different financial resources. The people sitting next to each other have different financial resources in this class. Same with towns, same with villages. Different natural resources. Omak comes from Arunachal Pradesh. I promise you, no place in India is as pretty as Arunachal Pradesh when it comes to natural resources. 98, 96% jungle. Okay? We have different friends with power, public values, traditions. Okay? How do we use our differences? This is what we're trying to harness. We're trying to take advantage of our differences rather than having our differences cause problems. So we need a universal process to create site-specific solutions. We need a universal process to create locally specific solutions. Now there are two currencies of social change. I will be talking mostly about the human energy, so the currency of change. But that does not mean that money is not important. Okay, there are two currencies, and what the opportunity is today is to learn how to use both. You have to put a mathematical value on it. The human energy currency, we can show, takes care of about 2/3 of a problem. And the money-based solution takes care of about 1/3. And in order to get maximum efficiency, you have to use both. But the human energy side is twice as powerful, usually, as the monetary side. So if you're going to be successful in life, you should learn how to use both. But because mostly you're being trained in the other way, I'm going to be talking about how to use the human energy side, which then brings the human energy side then brings the money side to greater efficiency. Okay, we're trying to create a synergy between the two. When we do, we have been able to show that typically you get double the impact in half the time for 20% the cost. That's very, very powerful. Double the impact in half the time for 20% the cost. In Arunachal Pradesh, the programs that we ran using seed scale, and Omak is here, we can talk afterwards with some questions. The change in health practices in the villages followed that formula in terms of the improvement in child mortality, life expectancy, health dynamics. Double the impact, half the time, twice the cost. In China, where we were using this, it was mentioned in the introduction, creating 12 national parks, we were able to create double the size for 20% the cost. Because we were getting the local people as partners and all the local resources. These national parks in China that were created were the first parks in the world that didn't have any wardens. There was no police. The villagers were doing all the policing. Everybody who was inside the park. Maybe 50,000 people or something like that. How do you use the local people as the police? I grew up in UP, in the Rajaji Corbett National Park. I was hunting tigers back when we used to hunt tigers. I'm an old man. Okay? My grandparents used to hunt with Jim Corbett himself. Okay? They have used wardens. We have police in Corbett Park who are keeping the people under control. If you change the management system to a human energy system rather than a money system, the tigers of India would not be nearly as threatened as they are today. In Tibet, with the projects that we're doing using this system, every single species of wild animal has its population numbers increasing. Snow leopard, Tibetan wild ass, Tibetan gazelle, the bears, everything. You can double the impact in half the time, 20% the cost. When we are talking about community here, we're talking about community as agent. That means the group that is doing the work. That's what we mean by agent. Sometimes you listen to politicians and they say, we're going to do community-based work, but what they mean is the community is the target. We're going to shoot the development services to the community through a budget. Or we are going to get the community as free volunteers. We're going to work according to our priorities, and the community is essentially a new type of slave labor. Okay? But in seed scale, when we talk about community, we mean the community is the full partner. And the classroom is the community. The community is where we're going to learn from, not the textbook. So we're going to see what's working there in every community. We're going to find those seeds, and we're going to grow those seeds by learning from the community. We're not learning by listening to their myths, their folk legends, which may be delightful stories. I love to listen to villagers tell me about the mythology, but I'm not going to believe it. I'm going to believe the facts. This is evidence-based. Okay? We're going to learn from the successes. And then, from those successes, they create nodes of growth. They're growing outward. And those then, it's the qualitative and quantitative expansion that I was mentioning earlier. And this process that has been started is different in community 1 from community 2, community 3, but it's the same process. So you've got different types of growth happening, but it's all occurring through the same process. That's just like going to school. Each of you is doing the same process and going to class and going to school. But the learning that's happening is different for each student. How do you create this community-wide learning change process? That's what we're talking. And when you do, it grows dramatically, the scale. And the interesting thing here is it's more sustainable. Because it's not being paid for by external resources and budgets and subsidies. All this growth is like a tree growing in the local area with its local resources from the local soil. Now, we'll come to Swaraj. This is one of the most important slides. I will come back to it again. It is what we call the revolution of rising aspirations. Every human in the world is alive. Because you're alive, you have some aspiration. Maybe it's for a new girlfriend. Maybe it's for more money. Maybe it's for better looks, health, something, music, a Mac, iMac computer, whatever. You've got it. You've got an aspiration. But the problem is that once you get your Apple computer, you have a new aspiration. You're never satisfied. So how do you create that into a positive force? It can be a very negative force. Once you get good health, you no longer want to worry about your health. You're sick, you got rid of the fever. All of a sudden you want to go out and go to the movies, cinema. Your aspirations have changed. How do you keep that from being frustration? Okay, that's where this process is coming in being. So there's a feedback loop. Let's see if I can get this working correctly. This button here. So you start with actions here. You start with your aspiration, and that aspiration starts to get filled by your actions. So you do something. You take and you go buy your computer. Now you have the computer and you have new aspirations. Okay? And those are going to lead to new. And so this goes around this way. But it doesn't go around in a circle. It goes around in a spiral where these aspirations are always going out. Okay? Action leads to aspiration. Aspirations lead to action. Action leads to new aspirations. New aspirations leads to new action. It's this. How do you harness this process? That's what I'm going to be talking about. And what we come back to this point I mentioned earlier, it's the synergy between qualitative and quantitative growth. Once you start having growth in one way, that's changing the quality of your life, that's creating a new desire and new quantitative expansions. Okay? What is important here is that it's internal dynamics that are driving this. Okay? It's you, it's your community, it's an internal process, it's not external government policy. But you're growing outward into the society. You're growing outward and you're taking advantage as you grow outward of the new resources that are coming to you. You've got new resources now that you've come to BIMTech. You did not have them. Most of you are first-year students, I think. You did not have them last year. You've got new resources. Your spiral has gone out. Okay? So that you're now able to get new resources and new aspirations because this cycle, this revolutionary feedback loop is happening. What we're talking about is different. It differs, I should say, from traditional thinking. Our modern mentality thinks cause and effect. You do something, something will happen. Okay? Look at this great sin that the United States did placed on the world with 9/11 and the terrorism attack. Somebody did something to us. We went and we did something back to Afghanistan, Iraq, what have you. They were not related in any way. Because we were thinking terrorism is attacking America, we're going to counterattack. We wasted lives, money, damaged the whole planet. Because we thought it was cause and effect. Cause and effect very seldom actually happens in human relations. And we'll be talking more about that very soon. The point is this: the world is a complex place. The world is not a simple place. And Descartes, like Sir Isaac Newton, was a genius. Cartesian thinking dates back in modern scholarship to Descartes. That's what we call Cartesian thinking, cause and effect. certainly figured out the laws of Newtonian physics, but we now know Newtonian physics is applicable about 25% of the time. We're getting to quantum mechanics, great theory of relativity, these other theories for which Newtonian physics is part of the answer. This is the same sort of thing here with seed scale. It's part of the answer that connects Cartesian thinking is 25% relevant. What works in the complex world? So what I'm going to do right now is to give you a very quick tutorial in complexity theory. And I'm staying out of the mathematics here. Okay? But complexity theory is something that I encourage you to think about. And within complexity theory, there's a subfield called emergence. And that is specifically what I'm going to be talking to you about here very soon. Just 4 slides, so don't get worried. Okay. The point is that the traditional model is typically not accurate in social settings. It's very expensive, and it never reaches everybody. Because you go into a society, you go into a community to do something, and you only get to a certain percentage of the community. The government of India sets up a big scheme to go to do something, they only reach 25%. Okay, if they're lucky. What can we do that engages all of India? Okay, what can we do that engages all of your village? Okay, and this is where complexity theory comes in. In complex thought, every interaction is simple, but every action is also very different. And what is important about all those simple actions is that they're always responding to other actions. Okay? What you do in this side of the classroom is based on the responses that are coming from me, and what you're doing is based on the responses that are coming from me. This is a more cause and effect situation. But if this was a study group, and you were all in the library, your actions would be based on the other people that are sitting at the study tables nearby and what they're learning. Okay? And that is the way the real world works. It is what we call a complex adaptive system, CAS. And there are many simple examples of CASs. For instance, a river. Okay? A river looks like it's the same, but it actually isn't. The water is changing all the time. And it's changing in response to the forces that are inside the river. The stream, the bank, the river, the flow, the pressure. And that's causing the river to change all the time. And ants in the colony, it looks like there's, you all know ants are stupid. But look at the wonderful architecture that they create. How did these stupid animals create such consistently beautiful architecture? Okay? They are creating a complex adaptive system in an ant colony. A city. You may have a mayor of a city, but show me any city in the world, even under Saddam Hussein, or North Korean dictator, nobody can control a city. Okay? The people in the city control the city by their interactions. And their interactions are very complex. You go into slums. Slums are usually very safe places. They may not be safe for you as an outsider when you go in, but they're safe for the people who are there. Okay? Why is the slum a safe place? You look at a village where there's disease, there's pathogens, that should be making everybody sick, but basically that village is mostly healthy. You go there, you're going to get sick. But the people who live there don't. These are complex adaptive systems that have adapted to their situation. whether it's the slum, whether it's the health situation, and how does this process grow and change? This is now, I'm coming back to the point of principles. What is controlling, what is creating the adaptive complex system is principles. Okay? It's the way the city functions that defines the city. It's what the people believe. It's what they're doing. Okay? The same in the village, the same in your family. So, each family in this room is going to have different principles. Some of you come from one religious background, others come from a different background. Okay? Some come from different educational levels, different poverty levels. Others come from where the parents are in total control. Others come from the fact that the parents never show up because they're always busy working. Okay? Whatever the situation is, your families are all living. What's creating your family structure is different principles that are driving your family. That is a complex system at a very simple, basic level. Now, what's interesting is, let's see this. We normally think of the military as a line of control system. The commander speaks, the directions come down to the military system, so that is designed to be a control system. But military systems know that they lose control. The communication system breaks. The enemy attacks in some way. And so that the control of the military doesn't work anymore. So that they have principles that all soldiers are taught. Move to the higher ground, protect the unit, establish communication for central command. So that if control breaks, they immediately go to a complex system that's running on principles. Okay? I've been doing a lot of work in Afghanistan. I leave on Friday to go back and work in Afghanistan. In Afghanistan, we think that it's a dangerous place, but I assure you, I'll be walking around, talking, so on and so forth. Now, of course, some people get blown up. Happens from time to time. I've lost several of my good friends. But the basic system in Afghanistan is working from principles. You protect your family first. You create hospitality to all. There are principles that are running even in situations that we consider to be out of control. That's my point. In America today, my government, I assure you, has no control over the American people. It's trying, especially with our totally incompetent congressional system of the Democrats and Republicans doing shameful acts. Okay? In America, everything is look out for yourself. Don't worry about anybody else. Your success is measured by money. And everybody's now concerned with safety in the United States. No longer do we say goodbye. We don't use that word anymore. Be safe. Okay? We've totally changed the values in the United States in 10 years. The degree of self-interest has gone up. The degree of safety concern has gone up. We've changed the principles by which our society is operating. Okay, now, what is interesting about a complex system that's based on principles? What is important about this is that it can respond when it's attacked. Because it is those rules that are driving. You don't have military assistance, because the system is when it's attacked. Those systems are broken. It's the principles that take over. We do that naturally. The question is, what we do naturally in unnatural situations, how can we do this and control it? The examples I gave to you were places like Afghanistan and the slums and places like that. How can we use this principle-based method of interacting in and control. And that's what we're going to talk about here when this slide changes. Okay. What you need to learn how to do is the last part of this slide. You need to learn how to engage all the dynamics in the system. If you're doing, let's say, a health project, and you only think about the health dynamics, you're going to miss a great amount of opportunity that's happening in the larger society. So a good health worker is paying attention to what's happening in the political system. A good health worker is paying attention to what's happening in the school system. But the good health worker is paying attention to the larger dynamics. It's just like a mother who's paying attention to what's happening in the life of her children. And using all of those dynamics, the children's friends. The child may no longer be listening to the mother, but the child will listen to one of the friends. You're learning how to use the dynamics in the whole system. You're learning how to use the breadth of the resources. Okay? You're moving out of the idea of control to the idea of creating partnerships. And at the core of this process is a process of humility. This has gone out. It's okay with me. Is it jumping? Is it bumping? Jump up there. You be joking. Okay. So, the point I'm trying to emphasize here is that there is in this, there's a terribly important need here to position yourself in relationship to your system. It's an act of humility. To my mind, this was one of the great insights, again, we get from Gandhi. He was a humble man who was trying to identify with the Indian people. He was not Nehru. Now, India needed Nehru, okay? But the Gandhian insight was one of humbling himself with the Indian people. He didn't try to control the Indian people. He tried to partner with them. He tried to use the resources that were available all over India, rather than setting them up, as then we saw in the 1950s, which I remember so well, all these development plans of India, okay, which were trying to then deliver the services. Okay, that's not the Gandhian approach. But what really works is if you do both of them. This was what the interesting opportunity then came in the case of India with the 73rd Amendment to the Constitution. Okay, Panchayati Raj. And some states in India really get this, and other states don't. And I won't at this point make a digression and talk about the states that have really implemented this idea of partnership with the people under the opportunity that came with Panchayati Raj. But this is exactly what I'm talking about here. It's using the understanding that's inside systems. Okay? It's not trying to make a system simple. It's saying that there's complexity there and we're going to use the complexity. What is so important here is that you realize that there are no haves and have-nots. It's universally available to everybody. Okay? And that if we use all of these resources, we can go forward. And in going forward, we're establishing our momentum. It is our momentum that's carrying us forward. It's our movement that we ourselves have created. And with that movement, we're using local money, we're creating local resources, and what is happening necessarily by that is efficiency. This type of process where the local direction is controlling and allocating resources is a means of maximizing efficiency in a way that's never possible when the control is external. Okay? And what this results in is that people and resources are being used for those things that they're uniquely capable of. And the critical dynamic in this becomes education. As people learn how to do that process better. And the result in this is the development of bottom-up capacity. As this learning process is happening, the bottom-up is learning because it's doing. It's learning by doing. Okay, now in this process, there are 4 principles, there are 7 tasks, and 5 criteria, and this becomes the mechanism by which we achieve this process. Okay, now let's skip over this one. Let's see, I want to get to another section here. Okay, the first principle I've already shared with you. Okay, I'm getting into it right now. Principle number 1 that I mentioned before, it's building from successes. Okay, you're finding what's working and you're going to strengthen that. And the principle number 2 I've already mentioned. It's creating a 3-way partnership from the bottom up. And you're using the top-down resources to create an enabling environment, money, policies, and whatnot. And from the outside in, you're bringing in ideas and innovation, and that's creating the forward momentum. And then what's driving that momentum is principle number 3, evidence. Okay? Now, usually decisions are made by people who are in control, who have power. And when you have a 3-way partnership going, of the bottom up informing the top down, and the top down informing the bottom up, and the outside in bringing in innovation, where we all meet is with the evidence. We say, what is the evidence? That's not where we're saying, where's the money? Who's in power? Okay? We're finding what the local truth is. Once again, this is a truth-driven process. We come back to the Gandhian idea of the truth force driving the process. And the result is behavior change. The system is changing the way it works. This is not an externally driven process. Now, how we do that is the first step is to understand that decisions are best made by groups, not by individuals. You need a chair of a committee, but this committee then brings in multiple perspectives. So you get a coordinating committee to run this process. Otherwise, if you have only single leadership, you're leaving people out. That becomes an exclusionary process, so that the whole group is not working. The second step in this process is to identify local successes. And you go out and find what's working in your community. Not what's failing, not where the problems are. You find what's working, and you're going to strengthen that. And the third process that you're doing here is that you're going to go and get an education. And you're going to go somewhere else and see what's working there, and you're going to bring these ideas back. And the fourth thing is that you're going to now find what resources you have. You're going to study your local situation. You found your successes in the local community. Now you're going to find the resources in the community. Who are your partners? Where's the broader resource base? And from that, you create a simple plan. Not a complicated multi-page plan. Down in Maharashtra, where we've done this, we paint the plan on the side of a house, so everybody can see what their job is. And then every month, 1 month, we change the plan. We have a community meeting. And you can see that so-and-so is not doing their job, because it's a public document. It's a real document. It's painted on the side of the house. Now everybody starts to follow the plan, and they get the momentum going. And that forward momentum going is what's carrying you. Go back to the point I made. You're trying to get that momentum going. And then once you get the momentum going, you say, change things. We need to make corrections in the momentum. And that process, you don't do to try to achieve your plan. This is where it differs from normal management techniques. You're going to be learning a lot about management in your courses here. But what this system says is you don't try to achieve your plan, you try to strengthen your principles. Because your principles are what is your ultimate real strength when you make your mid-course corrections. Okay, so we have these 7 tasks. They come together, and then we go forward. Now the question is, as we're going forward, how do you stay on course? So you need an evaluation system. You need an analytical system, because your plan might be wrong. You have to be changing your plan. Okay, so we need a guidance system that is getting feedback from the local situation. We don't want feedback from the outside, right? We're growing from our local resource base. So we need a local guidance system. And the first one is to look at the criterion of equity. Is everybody moving? Who is being excluded? Because if anybody's being excluded in that process, you're a community divided. It's like a family where one person is getting all the food and the other person is not getting enough food. Okay, the family is not healthy in that situation. The community is. So our number one criterion, who is excluded? Are we all moving forward together? The next question is sustainability. And often sustainability is misunderstood. There are 3 phases to sustainability. One is the environmental phase. If you're destroying your environment, you will obviously suffer. That's natural resource sustainability. The second type of sustainability is the financial sustainability, economic. If you're running out of your money, you can't continue the process. Okay? So you have to have a viable economic base. And the third one that's terribly important, and most people, most families even forget about it, is how do we share our values? Because if you're no longer sharing your values in the community, you're going to have disagreements. Just think of all the examples in India where people do not share disagreements, and where they do not share values. And because of that, there's so much wastage of people arguing over values. The fact of the matter is that even though your values are supremely important to you, what is more important is that we learn to live with each other's differences. This is what Gandhi did very well. He was a Hindu, but he tried to work with the people who had very different values from what he had. And it was from that then that you get the community strength that, of course, it is India's greatest. India has 2 fantastic strengths that I think the rest of the world completely underestimates. Number one is India's ability, decade after decade, to live with its differences. Okay? In values and other things. You also get terrible fights. I'm aware of that. And the other thing is that it's a mirror image of this in India that I respect so much. No other country I know is you're equal in your free speech. You can have complete garbage in the newspapers and on the street corners, and you don't go to jail. It's really remarkable. It's really remarkable. In my country, you get put in jail, especially when George Bush was president. On Guantanamo. And truly, just as parenthetical, we were working in the mosques in Afghanistan. We had 490 mosques, an American organization, using the mosques for literacy programs. and family planning, mind you, in Afghanistan. And I got called in before my Secretary of Defense, an idiot. I'm an idiot, I can speak freely, by the name of Donald Rumsfeld, and he told me I was promoting Islam because I was doing community development out of the mosques. America, the land of freedom of religion, and I can't do it in Afghanistan? So anyway, the point that I'm trying to say is sustainability requires an understanding of values and ecological issues and economic. Holism, this is the idea that comes again from Daniel. Is our momentum balanced between education and health and economics and fun and leisure, the whole balance of change? Because if you're just financial situation's improving and you're having no fun, why do that, huh? So, you need to get a holistic balance, and you need to be watching that. The idea of interdependence. We live on one world today where we all have to be interdependent. And of course, I began by talking about this idea of empire. And this idea of empire is one of creating dependency. But dependency ultimately is victimization. And what we need, and what this process is coming forward with, is the idea of interdependence. You cannot be truly independent anymore. There's no island that's going to survive, no state that's going to survive by itself. It is in developing our relationships and our interdependence that allows us to go forward. Okay, so we have to be finding ways of measuring. Are we more and more interdependent? Okay, how do we work together? Well, when we do, then we become aware of our commonality worldwide. One of the hardest things is the idea that in life is this idea of iteration. Most of us, especially you who all must be extraordinarily intelligent, or you wouldn't be here, having gotten great marks in school, is to forget the idea of getting things right. Okay? More important is to make sure that the next time you do it, it's better. Okay? This idea of iteration. Get the job done now. Be satisfied in getting all your papers done, all your courses done. And then the next time you take next year's courses, do them a little bit better. Okay? If you try to get everything perfect, you will always miss some very important things. Okay? So the idea of iteration in a complex world. Now in a simple world of just studying for your mathematics test, yeah, you can do that. But in the complex world of life, you can never get everything done. So you need to get things done, never them done perfectly. You'll be able to get things done once, and then the next time around, get them done a little bit better, and a little bit better. And that is, again, coming back to this idea of forward momentum and growth. And what happens then when you do this is that you get human energy going to scale. Okay? You get this growth process happening. And with that, I'm going to stop for questions. I think we've run out of time. What? I think now's the time for some questions. How much time do we have for questions? 10 minutes. So I run a master's degree course with future.edu and now with the universityoftheworld.org. If you want to get them, oftheworld.org is the new program, and then future.edu. But I'm going to stop here because this is not a full master's degree program in this method, and let any questions you might have. I appreciate your patience. It's a hot day in a hot city, and thank you for your patience. But any questions? Sir?
Can the seed scale system be implemented under capitalism, or does it require a new socialism or a new regime?
I love your question, by the way, so that everybody get to hear it again.
Can the seed scale system be implemented under capitalism itself, or does it require a new regime change like socialism?
It definitely does not require socialism. I'm not saying against socialism. The idea of socialism actually is a huge amount of control in socialism that's top-down in order to achieve the Marxist objectives of equitable division of resources. So the seed scale system is based on partnerships, okay, of the partnership of the bottom-up, top-down, outside-in. So it thrives better in capitalism, but we need regulatory systems, so we need the top-down to create the enabling policy environments, okay? But most communities are ideal wherever they are, even in North Korea, because the community system is almost always, even in, there are some exceptions. China during the 1960s would be one example. But even in China during the 1960s, control almost always stops at the community level. So that at this community level, you can get the seed scale system going. Let me give you an example. I've been working in Tibet now for 30 years. Okay? Tibet, most people think of as an oppressive situation with Communist Party control over the Tibetan people. I've made 45 field visits there, worked there, so on and so forth. The Communist Party system is up here, but it isn't functioning at the village level. So you start to get community-based mobilization. Was made earlier, this Pendaba program. It's now growing in villages all over Tibet. And the earlier mention was made of the UN Prize. This year, the Pendaba program in Tibet got the Equator Prize from the UN. Okay? Because it's able to mobilize at that level. And that's what's the great strength of community-based work, is that most governments fail at that level. So it creates an open space. Yes?
So, even though Gandhiji was an expert in involving human energy in various things he did, the Indian government has been facing plenty of problems in involving human energy in the various schemes it has proposed and has carried out. So what are your opinions in that? Also, is the seed capital, is the seed scale concept good enough to apply in big projects like Indian public distribution system?
They're both. I mean, the biggest mistake I made was talking too long and not letting you ask you great questions. You had two brilliant ones. The Panchayati Raj amendment to the Indian Constitution, when properly administered, and several states are doing it much better than others. I think Andhra, for instance, and my data is a couple of years out of date. Andhra, Rajasthan, for instance, are two examples of doing Panchayati Raj well. That is an example of the Indian government beginning the steps towards partnerships. The largest experiment in top-down development that human history has ever seen is the block grant program under Nehru, which is an example of how not to do it. Okay, I think while Nehru was certainly a wonderful, great leader, I had a very humorous encounter with him when I was 3 years old, and he took and slept in my bed. I admire the man, but his philosophy of development, I think, set India back and broke this potential that came out of the Gandhian example. And of course, Gandhi was assassinated in 1948. I think that the momentum that was already underway was essentially isolating Gandhi and the Gandhian approach. And people like Vinoba Bhave and whatnot tried to bring it back, but they were also marginalized. The real insight came with the 73rd Amendment. And unfortunately, since then, a lot of the progress that the 73rd Amendment could give, I think, has been disrupted because people found it was also a good way to make money. And so in many cases, many states, that has been compromised. However, you have that legal tool available, and many communities I know have used it very successfully in order to fight the exploitative practices. I'm just trying to speak specifically to your question. Do you want to follow up? Is that enough, or do you want to push your point a little harder?
Why isn't the Indian government trying even more to address this? That they will be able to make this scheme even better if they involve the human energy.
I won't speak for the Indian government.
Why? What are the?
But I will say that the most remarkable thing was recently when you had nobody would have expected this last elections to get an absolute majority. Okay, BJP. Whether you're BJP, whether you're Congress, I don't care. What was remarkable here was that the Indian people were saying, we want change. Okay, and so the Indian people were exercising the bottom-up voice. Now, I think the great joke, at least from some of us around the world when we look at India, is that India is a democracy only once every 5 years. Okay, when you have your votes, and they're inspiring, as we saw this time. Now the question is going to happen, what's in between? And will the BJP now truly listen to the fact that the Indian people want to be listened to? It's a question. In the back? Okay, Madam.
So as you said, communities generally, they are complex within inside. It's a complex adaptive system that we are adhering to. And as you said, you've been working in Afghanistan for some time. So sir, how do you manage it there, this implementing the seed scale system there, when every single day the foremost thing in the minds of people is surviving for that particular day? Then how does growth enter there?
Right. Let me quickly, since I've already mentioned it, Afghanistan's a great example of seed scale working. And typically in Afghanistan, we work with women, which normally is not considered to be, Afghanistan's not viewed to be an area of women's progress, shall I say. And we've started with priority areas for women, which almost always, in my experience in Afghanistan, to my surprise, was literacy. They were more concerned about that than other priorities. They want women because of the value of the written word in Afghanistan. In no culture I've ever seen literacy and scholarship so respected. It's truly amazing to me. The women want to enter into scholarship. So we run these schools and learning environments. And then from that process, you start to get cohesion among the women. And out of that cohesion among the women, they have a variety of aspirations. And so let me just tell you one simple. We started with these literacy programs for the women when we had girls teaching because they knew some more than the elderly older women. And the girls said, we see our boys playing football. Okay, but we want to go out and play football too. Okay, well, the problem is this modesty element. How do you play? Even if you're not wearing a full burqa, it's a little hard to play football. You've got your shawl around your shoulders, not over your head. Okay? Unacceptable in Afghanistan. Well, we went and talked to the mullah, and we said we had this problem. All the girls in our villages, we had at this point 400 villages, they were wanting to play football. Okay, but see what's important here is that the girls had their voice. The girls had come together, and the mothers, okay, in what is considered a repressive society for gender. And so the mullahs had a meeting, and they said, well, we're going to paint the footballs white. So they got shoe polish, and they painted all the footballs white. And so when the sun went down, the girls could retain their modesty. And they played football, and we were all cheering and shouting for the girls, okay? And it was acceptable because they were in burqa, because the sun had gone down. Okay? And this girls' football league was expanding out of the Hazarajat and going across Afghanistan until the U.S. military, in its infinite wisdom, realized that all these football fields were excellent helicopter landing sites. And so they all got GPS coordinates and they moved to a war zone. I'm just trying to say that once you get this bottom-up strength, you've then got to negotiate. This is why I ended up going and talking to the U.S. Secretary of Defense and the things I've alluded to. They get complex. It's a complex system. We were working with these few dynamics. But the amazing thing in Afghanistan now, the truly amazing thing is we just had an election. There were 11 candidates running for president. Of them, 9 were Paka Gundas. Okay? And the 2 who were somewhat qualified, half decent, or even totally decent, I'll say totally decent, so we leave Afghanistan. Somebody may be sitting listening and saying the word. 2 totally decent candidates came out on top. So we had, in this context of oppression of the Chechens and the Iranians and the Pakistanis and the Indians, you were all sending in your forces, and goodness knows my country and the Norwegians and everybody, sending in all these forces. The people of Afghanistan have now spoken, like the people of India. And this is a very, to my mind, hopeful sign for how this system can work. We have one question over here.
Good afternoon, sir. Sir, basically you said about how a community comes together and works with lower finance. And the example of China, how they could place in a more mainstream national parks. So they could place national parks all over China with just 20% of the finance.
Right.
How do these communities get motivated? What makes them go the extra step?
When we first proposed the national park on Mount Everest, there were very few parks in China. There was one for pandas and a few other things, but there were very few. This was 30-some years ago. And I happened to say I want to do the Mount Everest one. And so I went into Tibet, and I had a meeting with a man by the name of Hu Jintao. Now, I was the first foreigner, what they in China they call long nose, to go negotiate with Hu Jintao. He later becomes president of China. And then Hu Jintao says to me, it's all Mount Everest, it's all rock and ice. There's nothing there. Why do we protect it? And I said, because in protecting Mount Everest, your people will benefit. I didn't say because I want to protect the environment. I said because we can create an environment that will improve the quality of life for the people, and we'll start with health. Because health is very easy to have big successes in diarrhea, pneumonia. These are easy things mothers can take care of and cure. Once people started to see their children living, then they said, oh, then we get into this revolution of rising expectations. How can we get money? How can we get schools? And then we say, well, guess what? We want you to take care of the environment. So we get partnerships. But it began with their wanting the improvement in their quality of life, which was totally different from the outside coming in and saying, this is a precious mountain. We're going to take this mountain away from the local people who've had it for so many thousands of years, and we're going to use this for our purposes. No, we're going to say we're going to improve your quality of life, and then from that, we get you to participate in the worldwide priority of conservation, or in the China-wide conservation. China's moved in on extraordinary conservation successes. Except if you've ever been to Beijing, you know the air quality is bad, the water quality is bad. They're creating national parks, but because their development is happening so fast, they're using up very vital long-term resources.
So how do we implement this in business organizations?
In a business organization, I think the most important issue that is typically missed is seeing the business initiatives that are present in communities. Mostly business initiatives start with your planning endeavor inside your management offices. And they're not really starting and seeing what the customer is wanting out in the field and in those issues. And then growing from that in terms of what's the business service to the customer's demand. That is, maybe I should have been speaking on that, but that's my one-sentence answer to your complex question. Have we run out of time?
Gandhiji completely revoked the national movement because some people burned the police station at the Chori Chora.
Yes.
He said that India was not ready then, not according to his principles. So what my question is that this principle is a person should follow his principle irrespective of what is right and wrong or what a majority says.
What was happening then some scholars will disagree with me, was that he saw his team coming apart. And Gandhi knew that as soon as he saw his team separating, he was going to lose. So he blamed the people in that instance. I think that it was a little bit arrogant move, the way he ended up blaming the people. He was in one sense protecting his own identity by not owning the problem himself. To my mind, that whole situation was not pure Gandhian. I think Gandhi fell away from his own behaviors and practices. He was a human being. He wasn't a god. He was infallible. But the motivating reason that scared him was he saw his team coming apart. And he had in that particular case some disagreements at his secondary level of his lieutenants who were trying to over-politicize it, and he was trying to push the social agenda and as his lieutenants were pushing the political agenda.
I think Dr. Taylor will take one last question.
Last question.
Just to keep the devotion to the time.
Of course, I apologize.
Sir, my question is that when you have such good seed-scale policies in Afghanistan, communities coming together, how do you tackle an external problem like the US army took over? In real life also we have good ideas with us, but there are external forces that take over us. And how do we tackle those problems?
First, as I said earlier in these questions, I really should have stopped half an hour earlier so that I could deal with your great questions. I really apologize to you because I underestimated the brilliance of your questions. This is where Gandhi comes. This is a good place to end this discussion. Gandhi would create a protest. And Gandhi would create the voice of the people when confronted with this type of situation you described. And what we now know, and we've seen it all over the world, is the voice, the strength of the human voice. This has become one of the most powerful things in the world today. It's more powerful than military. Okay? There's a wonderful book that came out this last year called The Great Indian Phone Book. Okay? It's published by Harvard University Press. And this shows that this is now the number 3 technology in India after the shoe and the pen and paper. It's ahead of the bicycle. It's ahead of the toilet. It's ahead of all other technologies in India except the shoe and the pen and the paper. And what this is allowing, it is allowing barefoot people to be able to have their community voice. They're connecting. It's allowing illiterate people, imagine illiterate people doing SMS. Okay, how does it work? You've seen it work because you walk on the street, you see it happen all the time. We're entering an age, in my point to you, where there is the potential, because of especially this technology. I can't imagine there's anybody in this room, you might not have an iPhone 5, but you've got something. Okay? Because of this technology, we have the capacity now to have a voice, to force our governments, to force our religions to listen to us. Okay, the extraordinary statement from the Pope the other day, who finally admitted that 2% of Catholic priests are pedophilic. Okay, it's the Catholic people who have now brought the truth before the Catholic Church. Okay, and this to me is the great Gandhian opportunity for today. So with that, I will end. Thank you.
Well, that was a great input coming from Dr. Taylor. Half of the things which I never understood were brought out, and thank you very much for upgrading my own knowledge base about the Gandhian approach, which I should have known better. In fact, the question answers were good, but for want of time, as always, we wish we could extend this a little longer, but then some point of time we had to close it, so I took the opportunity of calling it the last question. But should there be any more questions, you can always have the mail ID of Dr. Taylor and shoot your questions. I don't know whether you open it every day. But just as a token of our love and affection, I would request Dr. Shettigar to kindly present a memento to Dr. Taylor. One memory for Sripana. Now, sir, considering all the time that we had together, not adding to the time anymore, I just want to express a big thank you very much for being here.